Choosing a Home by ginnyrules27. Chapter 27. Mal sighed as she looked over the paperwork in front of her. She had been determined to help Ben out in terms of all the work he had to do in terms of being king. After all, she was going to be queen upon their wedding. It would make sense that she would take over some of the workload. Ben hadn't wanted to throw her into the deep end, though, so he had slowly started giving Mal the non-pressing paperwork. Well, it was more like Ben had to have his arm twisted to give Mal his paperwork. "Everything okay?" Ben asked as he looked over at her, slipping into the room. "Yeah," Mal nodded. "I'm just concerned over Claudine. Harry said she hasn't come out of her dorm, and it's been a couple of weeks since we brought her from the Isle." Despite being older than the average student, and Philip Sr. and Aurora providing a room, Claudine had been spending more time in her provided dorm. That didn't mean she had been avoiding Honeymoon Castle. Claudine had taken a shine to Arabella, and had quickly become the main reason why she'd leave her dorm with the exception of meals.
"And everyone else has tried talking to her?"
Ben asked. Mal nodded. At first it was understandable. She was a former angel turned rat. That alone would have been enough to turn her world on its head. But now we bring her to Oridon? And according to Harry and Jay, she and Henry have been seeing each other. Ben smiled as he heard that.
"That's great! That is great, right?"
"Of course," Mal nodded.
"It's just, you seemed rather shocked about it, so I thought—"
Mal shook her head. "We're fine with Henry having a girlfriend. Actually, we're more than thrilled about it. But he's always been single, since I've known Henry. So the very fact that he's got someone, it's a little disconcerting." In fact, Mal had almost fallen out of her chair when Harry had come in that day after coming from the Isle, announcing said fact.
"Okay, so we can go ahead and cancel that intervention!" Harry shouted as he walked into Ben's office. While Ben did have an office in his castle, he also had one in Oridon Prep. And since there would be new students constantly coming in from the Isle, Ben thought it would be better for him to do his work in there in case the new VKs needed something. He could always meet dignitaries at his castle if a meeting was really necessary. Plus, he had a sinking suspicion that Amir, Ikeo, Mal and Chip liked the fact he could leave work someplace and not have easy access to it. "What do you mean?" Mal asked once she'd settled down from jumping halfway to the ceiling from the way Harry had barged in. "The intervention for Henry," Harry clarified. "Harry's right," Jay nodded. "We can go ahead and cancel that."
Uma shook her head.
"Guys, I know we're happy to have seen the crew again, but we can't just cancel the intervention. Henry's been single for too long."
"Unless you two know something we don't?" Mal asked, raising an eyebrow, as she looked at her two best guy friends. Gil and Carlos had been appointed the VKs de jure since they were probably the least threatening VK boys in Oridon, other than the Smee twins.
"Henry has a girlfriend."
"I'm sorry, but what?" Ben paused as he walked in, blinking slightly as he saw the four of them already in his office.
"I thought I'd get used to things like this, but I'm not," he said as he shook his head, making his way to his desk. "Well, regardless, I kind of feel bad for Henry," Ben said, pulling Mal out of her thoughts. "If Claudine's still taking the separation hard, imagine what it's like for him."
Mal sighed. "I know, Ben. Trust me, if I thought I could order Henry to come to Oridon and be with her, I would. But with Freddie still alive and on the Isle, the only way that stubborn pirate would leave would be in a body bag."
"And that's not exactly something I'd like to picture,"
Ben said. "Me neither," Mal shook her head. "But I doubt you want to hear me talk about my crew potentially dying as they keep Freddie and the other angels trapped in their territory. What's up?"
"Hey, I love hearing you talk about your crew, even if it does involve potentially morbid topics, like them dying while facing off against Freddie, and now Audrey from what Claudine's told us," Ben said, holding back a sigh as he thought about his ex-girlfriend.
Mal gave him a small smile. You know you don't have to put on a brave face around me, right? You've known Audrey almost all your life. You're going to miss her.
I think I miss the person she was more than I miss her,
Ben said as he sat down on the sofa next to Mal.
Does that make sense?
Of course it does. Mal nodded and gave Ben another small smile. You know, when I was a kid, actually probably a toddler, I wasn't always friends with Uma. There was a girl named Maddie, Mim's granddaughter. Ben nodded to show he understood. Even if he had seriously have to investigate if Carlos had gotten anywhere in figuring out if brain bleach was a thing. Seriously, he'd need to get the mental image of someone with Madam Mim in that way in order for Mim to have a granddaughter. Well, anyway, Maddie and I were friends. Until one day, when we were 3, she decided she wasn't going to be in my shadow anymore. Mal continued. So we broke off our alliance. Good thing too, because the next week Maleficent went down to the docks to try to recruit Ursula into her clique.
You lost me.
Mal chuckled. Yeah, I got to meet Uma since Maleficent was determined to make sure everyone on the Isle saw me and quash the rumour that Dad had stolen me from under her nose. So any time Maleficent graced the Isle with her presence, I went.
Is that how you met Maddie?
No, for a bit Mim and Maleficent were allies, until Mim annoyed Maleficent too much. But anyway, do you get what I'm saying?
That it's a good idea to not annoy Maleficent?
Mal chuckled. Well, that's just common sense. But anyway, no, Ben. I'm saying that you can miss people who are no longer in your life. There's been a couple of times that I've missed Maddie, or wondered how she might react to something. Even now that she's joined a rival gang and is pretty dedicated to pure evil. Ben smiled and leaned over to kiss the top of Mal's head.
Thanks, Mal.
Any time, Benny, any time, Mal told him. But in all seriousness, is something up?
My parents have requested an audience with you, Ben said with a slight chuckle. Apparently they have received your father's package.
His what now?
You mean you weren't aware of the 15 chests he sent, Dad?
Ben asked as they started to make their way to the castle. I'm sorry, chests? Mal asked, but Ben didn't elaborate until they got to Beast Castle. Even though Mal was pretty insistent with the questions, Ben kept mum. Though maybe that was just because he wanted to see her face upon walking into the den. Your father went overboard, I'm afraid. Persephone chuckled as she walked over to her daughter, who had her jaw hanging down. You know your father sees the practice of dowries as archaic. Ironic, since he's well past ancient himself. But I suspect it's a way to get a jab at Beast for the whole betrothal contract. We weren't even asking for a dowry. Belle shook her head, having heard Persephone's comment to Mal. Why would we? I didn't have a dowry. To ask one of Mal would be completely ridiculous. Not to mention we would never ask for one this large. Beast sighed.
These could fund the kingdom for the next 15 years.
Oh, my apologies. I didn't know my husband put in so little, Persephone said with a small smirk as Mal chuckled. Beast shook his head as he reached into his jacket.
Mal, this is the real reason why we asked you here. Aurora reached out to us a few days ago and thought this belonged more to you than to her.
What are you talking about? Aurora doesn't have anything of mine, Mal told him, looking at her future father-in-law in confusion. Just like his son, however, Beast didn't elaborate, but handed Mal a large manila envelope. Mal looked at it quizzically, but opened the envelope, taking out the letter that was inside it. Lady Mal, forgive me. I know you would normally say that the use of titles are unnecessary, but I thought that in this instance it would be more appropriate. As I'm sure you are aware, when Maleficent was placed on the Isle, leadership of the Moors was awarded to my family, specifically Leah, with it falling to me as next in line, and then Audrey following.
I never felt comfortable with the Moors being under my family's leadership, as none of my family practices magic. I believe that someone skilled with magic should be its leader. Allow me to express my congratulations once more upon your engagement, and I hope the relationship between our families can continue, despite the harm that my family has caused yours. Sincerely yours, Aurora Rose, Queen of Auroria.
Mal paused as she read the letter, quickly scanning it once more, in case she had missed something. Maybe there was a translation issue? Maybe Aurora had written her a letter in French and the poor scribe tasked to translate it had completely botched the job? No. It's the same message, she thought as she read it again. Tentatively, she pulled out the other piece of paper that was in the envelope and stared at it with wide eyes. There, right in front of her, was the title for the position of Princess of the Moors. The Moors. Maleficent's home before she had been put on the Isle. Mal, dear? Belle asked, looking at the look on Mal's face. Are you all right? What is it that Aurora sent to you? Mal took a small breath, hoping that the shuddering aspect was only in her mind. If you'll excuse me, I need to step out for a minute.
Oh, of course, Beast nodded,
and Belle continued to frown in concern, as did Ben.
Mal, is everything okay?
I need a minute, Mal said and scurried out of the room, dropping the title in her mad dash to get out of there.
The Moors! She gave me the title of the Moors!
Mal thought as she ducked into an armoury. Probably not the most relaxing spot, but in all honesty, it was the only spot where someone wouldn't try looking for her right away.
All that work, trying to make people see me as me, or as Mum's daughter, and I still can't escape Maleficent. She's always going to be looming over my shoulder like some demon I can't escape, isn't she?
Mal, honey. Persephone's voice broke through Mal's thoughts.
Can I come in?
I mean, it's an armoury, but sure. Mal muttered as she opened the door for Persephone to walk into the room. Persephone gave her daughter a small smile as she held out the title. You dropped this in your quest to leave the room.
Mum, I don't want it, Mal stated. Aurora gave me a title that doesn't even belong to me. It's not mine. I don't want it. I don't want anything to do with the Moors or with her. Aurora can give it to Arabella when she's old enough.
Persephone gave Mal a small smile as she gently brushed a bit of hair out of her eyes. Mal, honey, you may not like getting things associated with the dragon, but this is yours by right. As much as we dislike it, you are still genetically connected to Maleficent, honey. Maleficent may have only provided the egg, but it's enough of a technicality to make it so that this is yours. But if you truly don't want it, why don't you just keep it and save it for one of your kids? Mal sighed and shook her head.
Mum, I've worked so hard to get Auradon to stop associating me with Maleficent. I don't want them to hear the word Moors and start it back up again. It's not fair. Not to Ben or to any kids we might have.
Mal, sweetheart, your first child will be the heir to Auradon, and any child after that will most likely be the heir to the underworld. If you have any more kids after that, Maleficent will be but a distant memory, especially if she remains a lizard. Mal shook her head.
Mum, most of the older VK girls on the Isle were lucky to have one kid with the diet we all had. I know I was lucky enough to get a regular supply of food, but you really think I'll have more than one kid?
There was a part of her that was still on the fence about the whole kid thing. Not because she doubted she could be a good mum. She had years of living with Steph to fall back on for that. No, it wasn't that. There was always a doubt in the back of her mind that somehow, some way, she'd find herself back on the Isle. And she didn't want any kids she might have had to deal with that. To know the pain of an absent mother. It's possible, Mal. You have a divine heritage. There are 12 Olympians after all, along with a bunch of minor gods. Persephone told her. I know, Mum. But like you said, I'm still connected to Maleficent genetically, meaning that I'm still only half god where it might count in this case. That's still more of a divine heritage than most of the kids are from the Isle, honey. Remember, even Uma's only a quarter god. Persephone said, keeping her voice gentle. There's no way to know for sure what the future holds. But it can't hurt to hold on to that title, can it? Mal sighed and looked at Persephone. All right, but I'm not using it. It'll go to my youngest daughter, if I have one. And that's well within your rights, Mal. It's your title. You can use it however you want, Persephone told her. Mal gave her mum a small smile. I love you, Mum. I love you too, sweetheart. Dad didn't have to provide a dowry, Mal said after a few minutes of silence. Persephone chuckled. I told him that, but he insisted. He wanted to make sure you were looked after and secure. Plus, I think it was a way for him to get one over on Beast. Yeah, that's probably the case. I mean, I'm engaged to Ben. I would have been looked after and supported even if Dad didn't provide a single gem. Persephone gave Mal a small smile. True, very true. But I think in some way he still sees you as his little girl and wants to be able to provide the way a father can. Even if he can't be here for most of the wedding prep. You know, your father spent about a week putting that dowry together. Half of the time was spent ranting about Beast and the concept of dowries altogether. Mal chuckled and shook her head in amusement. Why am I not surprised? Because you know your father as well as I do, Persephone said with a chuckle of her own. Mal nodded and then sighed. That dowry is probably worth more than all of the royal-born ruling queens combined. I mean, if they had one at least. He seriously didn't have to do all that. You're the daughter of two gods, Mally. Politically, you're worth much more than a mortal princess, Persephone said. I know we hate thinking about it like that, but it doesn't change the fact that it's true. More to the point, your father's the god of wealth. Your father doesn't often get to use that side of his duties. Mal sighed. I know politically I'm worth a lot. If we have to refer to it as if I'm being purchased like a broodmare for breeding. I'm just saying he didn't have to go to such extremes. I know. And as our daughter, you are priceless. But you know your father likes a challenge. Mal chuckled. Why can I see Ben saying the same thing? That I'm priceless, I mean. Because you know your fiancé, Persephone said, who's probably very worried about you, considering you almost ran out of the room like someone was chasing you. I know, Mal sighed. I just didn't expect to receive that title. I never expected to receive it, if I'm being honest, but that... Persephone smiled knowingly. I know it was a shock, and I know Aurora probably could have reached out to have a talk with you at first, and see if you wanted it. But she's been busy herself, what with getting Arabella settled and helping Claudine. I know, Mum. You know, the title wasn't the only thing in that envelope, Persephone said, handing Mal a few pictures. Mal took them and smiled as she saw what they were pictures of. Arabella. I wonder if they'll have a christening, Mal thought as she looked through the pictures of Arabella with her Uncle Phil, or being read to by Philip Sr., or napping with Aurora. With the track record of Aurora's family has with them, I wouldn't be surprised if they skipped it. You ready to head back? Persephone asked. Mal nodded. I will say for the record that Dad did not need to do that. I know, but you know how your father is when he feels challenged. Plus, I think he may have got a soft spot for King Ben. After the whole sword fight at Cotillion didn't hurt much either. But the dowry was always like a third strike against Beast for your father. What were the other two? The Isle and making a 16-year-old king. Mal shook her head. Ben volunteered to take up the crown to allow Beast. I know, Mal, and so does your father. but it doesn't change the fact that Beast could have refused King Ben's offer and allowed his son to have a couple of more years of being a teen before he had to rule, Persephone said. Mal nodded. She knew her father still had strong feelings against Beast, but it was nice to know that he was warming up to Ben. Though, really, who couldn't like Ben? Not liking Ben was like not liking Estelle. Where is Estelle? Persephone asked, as if she could read Mal's mind. With Haddie, Mal said. He's getting the Smee twins used to him. Persephone smiled. Good. Those boys will love Estelle once they're used to him. And I'm sure Estelle already thinks of them as his pups. CJ, Dizzy, and Celia, too. How do you know CJ was in Oridon? Haddie told me when he came back from Olympus. Mal couldn't help but smile as they made their way back to the parlour, where Ben immediately ran to embrace Mal. You okay? Yeah, Mal nodded. Aurora gave me the title of Princess of the Moors. I wasn't expecting it. Why would she? Oh. Mal nodded her head, though, to give her credit, Aurora only said in her letter that she thought the Moors should be ruled by someone who could use magic. As Mum pointed out, it could be handy to have, so I'll hang on to it, but I'm not going to use it. It's your title, Mal. You get to choose what you do with it. Mal gave him a small smile before looking around at all the chests. Gods, the number of spray paint cans this could buy! Belle let out a small chuckle as she heard that, then said the same thing, though he pondered about the number of books. You were doing just as much pondering, Belle, Beast said with a small chuckle of his own. I think it's safe to say the kingdom won't need to worry about its finances for many, many years. Mal nodded. Or it could make sure that the kids of the Isle are well fed for years to come. She thought as Ben wrapped his arms around her and held her close. Gods, this makes it feel more real, Ben whispered to her. I know, Mal nodded. A little exciting, though. Ben grinned and gently kissed the top of her head. At least now we don't have anything to worry about. All the excitement and trouble is behind us. We've just got the wedding to focus on. Nothing else could possibly go wrong from here. Right? End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. I like that chapter. I really do. And well, yeah, I can see that Hades would do that. And I think there was a crown in there, unless I'm getting it mixed up. But I like what Aurora does here. She's right. The Moors shouldn't be ruled by someone who doesn't understand them as completely as someone with magic could. And I like the idea that Mal's like... Well, anyone would have that kind of reaction, I think. People who've gone through what she would. It's a trigger, I think. Anyway, yeah, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to be notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!